Hello and welcome to Behind the Built Environment. Today, I'm joined by Marion Marsland and Helen Anderson from TICA to discuss their proposals for a third-party accredited competence assessment standard for the thermal insulation sector. As the industry responds to the Building Safety Act and a growing demand for demonstrable competence, specialist contractors are under increasing pressure to prove the quality, safety and consistency of their work. We'll explore why TICA believes this standard is needed, how it could work in practice, and what it might mean for members, clients, and the wider built environment. So, welcome, Helen. Welcome, Marion.
Hi. Yes.
Cool up north. We're in the middle of a massive heat wave down here.
Every day's cool up here. We've got aircon, and unfortunately, it's either ferociously cold or switched off. We're an insulation company. What would you expect?
Well, it's appropriate. We're talking about thermal insulation on a day. It's exceptionally hot. Anyway, I think you know how this process works. We always kick off with 5 quick-fire yes/no questions. Now, we've never done it with 2 people before, and I'm being honest with you, I'd not thought about this dynamic. So whoever comes up with the answer first wins, as they say. Right, number 1. Hands on buzzers. Number 1. Should competence assessment become mandatory for all specialist contractors?
No.
Taking the first answer. Secondly, is the industry still too reliant on self-certification?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, glad you both said yes. Question 3, would clients pay more for independently verified competence?
Not currently, but maybe in the future. No, it's not yes, no. Sorry.
It's not yes, no. What's it going to be, yes or no?
No, at the moment.
Points deducted there, Marion, I'm afraid. Right. Question 4. Has the Building Safety Act permanently changed expectations around specialist contractor competence?
No.
Could poor insulation workmanship become a bigger reputational issue for the built environment as net zero targets get tougher? Excellent. That was in unison at the end, which is what we like to see.
Is that the hardest yes, no you've ever done?
Pardon?
Is that the hardest yes, no you've ever done?
Yeah, I think so. But we like the idea there's some discord here. We might try and sow a bit more between you as you are in separate rooms. Not at my request, by the way, but it seems to have worked out well. So let's kick off with the first part of this. And I'll start with Marion, so it's easier. Can you start by explaining the problem you're trying to solve here? And what is missing in the way of competence that is currently assessed, evidenced, or recognised in the thermal insulation sector?
Well, I don't think it's one problem that we're trying to solve. I think there's a number of problems that we're trying to solve. And I think what the Building Safety Act gives to us is an opportunity to draw things together and solve a number of things, hopefully at the same time. So specialist contractors are not regulated in any way currently, and I think you can see that across other areas of thermal insulation in the news if you switch it on at any point now. So what are we trying to solve? We're trying to provide value proposition for membership within the trade body. We're trying to solve a problem for our membership's supply chain, and we're trying to raise the standard of thermal insulation as it becomes, and to quote a David Frise phrase, something I've always remembered, thermal insulation is moving from stuff to thing. And that means that how you install it and how effective it is once you've installed it really does now start to mean something, as well as everything else that's going on with the competence environment. So, I think trade associations are under increasing pressure at this moment in time to really define why are they there, what are they doing, and what do they contribute. And this is a difficult one to solve, but we have an opportunity to do that.
Great. Yeah, the stuff to a thing is, I think, quite important because it gets on an asset register if it's a thing as opposed to stuff. And an asset register needs maintaining, and therefore you take more interest in the thing. Um, Helen, TICA already has a really strong reputation for training and apprenticeship infrastructure. How would a competence assessment standard build on that rather than simply becoming another layer of paperwork?
I think the key thing is that it's operational competence and individual competence. I both lead to it, and ultimately it's about raising standards. So one supports the other, and they're completely you can't divide them, sort of thing. So yeah, one supports the other.
Marion, anything to add to that?
I think that we have we've been broadly acknowledged for the work that we've done on installer competence. Unlike, say, for example, our asbestos members who are licensed and have been licensed for many, many years. Maybe our friends in scaffolding or electrical or gas. Thermal insulation has never had that regulation around it. And so it's drifted around prior to sort of 10, 12 years ago. That apprenticeship standard was a chosen few. We've been very, very successful in driving attraction to our sector, apprenticeship numbers and training to our sector. We've done a lot of work in that. But I think we understand that from an organisational point of view, we've kind of hit blocks that many trade associations have hit. And I remember many members saying to me in the early years, what is the value in TICA? I have to be really honest with you, David. In the early years, I kind of struggled to answer that question, apart from our collective agreement. And my answer to them was always, if you don't do anything different to a non-TICA member, then absolutely no value whatsoever. You've got to do something different. And that difference has always been things to a higher standard. And accreditation, an accredited audit, a third-party accredited audit, gives us an opportunity to create that differential whilst providing something really tangible, valuable, and recognizable, I hope, within the supply chain.
Helen, the Building Safety Act has shifted the industry from being able to, or claiming competence, shall we say, to actually proving competence. What does that mean for an insulation contractor?
I think a lot of it again is tied up with skills and training, and it's about, I think it's backed up really well with our routes to competence by the card scheme. So making sure that the workforce is trained.
It's not a broad brush approach. I speak to many specialist contractors, and I was talking to one a couple of weeks ago, a master builder actually, not an insulator. I won't know names, but he's got a workforce that he's worked with very, very closely for 20 years. He truly does know that the people that are working for him are competent. How would he prove that and write it down? He's probably got absolutely no idea. And when I asked him how he knew his roofer was competent, he said, I'll ask him myself, actually. And the guy came back and said, I'm a tiling guru god, at which everybody laughed. And he almost certainly is a guru god of tiling. But actually giving our members the opportunity to document that in a format that is consistent and recognisable maybe to BESA members, which is ultimately our supply chain, that nobody has really ever crossed that bridge, and that's the bit we've got to do.
I think that's where construction is kind of still fairly behind times in terms of progress. If you look at any other industry, medical, health and social, whatever it might be, there's always been that need to kind of prove and provide evidence that you're competent, and to also sometimes have to pay for that privilege, whether it's through university or additional qualifications. And I think that there's been an attitude within construction where that hasn't been the case, where people have kind of flown under the radar, claim to be able to do things, and they might be very good at doing them, but that bit around that marker to say this is me, I can do what I say I can do, and this is the evidence of that. That's always sort of been missing, and that's quite a hard thing to overcome. But I think slowly but surely, it's catching up.
And Marion, you very kindly mentioned the BESA competence assessment standard, and part of that, I think the crucial part of that is the technical competence. It's the can you do the job bit. We often say that most of the CAS at the moment is 400 questions, but not one that says can you do the job. Do you see the TICA scheme being similar to BESA scheme, being two-part, i.e. a business review, a business system review, and a technical audit?
Yeah, yes, absolutely, I do. And part of the reason for that, well, there's several reasons for that. Number one, our members are in a supply chain quite often with your members. So again, back to that consistency and uniformity and driving an understanding of what we're trying to achieve. That's going to be much quicker if we're all doing it in a broadly speaking similar way. And I think that having your pre-qualifications and your questionnaires and your policies and procedures in place, yes, of course, you relatively straightforward to do. Actually getting on site and proving that as a contractor you've got the complete setup correctly, you've priced the job correctly, you've set the job up correctly, you've got the right people off site, you've purchased the right products. You can prove that what you priced is what you purchased, and you can prove that you installed it using the right people. And actually an expert goes to site and can say that has been installed correctly on this occasion. For me, that's where we say you can actually do the job. But that doesn't come without its challenges, not least of which the cost of doing all that. And that's why, in my view, and part of the work that I'll be taking forward with our technical director in the coming year or so, is to make sure people understand the value in that. Because if we can't get that out as a value proposition, how do you pay for it?
I think you're intending to use third-party accreditation. What's the value of that, do you think?
Oh, I'm going to have to really be disciplined when I answer this, because I could talk all day about this. But third-party accreditation for me is absolutely vital. There is no point doing this. I really do have my TICA hat on now. I can't speak for anyone else, but with my TICA hat on, again, I think trade bodies, we fall into different categories of why we exist, our reason for being, and we take a bit of bad press. Some of us do. Are we actually adding to the value chain? What are we actually doing? Well, if we mark our own homework and we tell you our members are great, if you buy a cake from a cake stall, that guy's going to tell you it tastes amazing and it's wonderful value for money because he wants to sell cakes. We represent insulation contractors. We want to believe they're all brilliant, but the truth of the matter is sometimes they're not. And it's the bravery of being able to say, you're actually not meeting our standards. And having independence of that from an accredited third party is, in my view, critical. And I wouldn't have attempted to do it unless we were going down that road.
Yeah, it is. I would attest to the fact it's a brave decision, because if you do that, you have to be prepared to lose members, which indeed we have done. But actually, you find that you also attract more members. If it becomes something of value, then people will want to join. And it seems to me that it's an essential requirement for the future that you would have to evidence competence compliance. And if you don't do a technical audit, what are you auditing? What are you checking?
I think also for TICA, we're almost, I'm hesitant to use the word blasé, and I'm sure Helen's gonna come in on this one too, but we are well used to third-party accreditation in various different forms. We're audited by, I've lost count of how many bodies, auditors for various parts of our business, not least of which are apprenticeship side of things. So we're really, really used to having a Bible, following it, and standardization, and ensuring that we can absolutely prove we're meeting that standard, which in effect we're doing internally what we want to help our members do.
I think Yeah, the only thing I was going to add was I think what else is in our gift is that we have ACAB, which is our asbestos removal side of the business trade association, and it's part and parcel, and always has been, if those members, that they have to be audited, and they're used to that because they have to have a license, and that's regulated by the HSC and a whole. But at the moment, those audits aren't third party accredited. It's given us quite good insight into where we want to be, and there isn't any sort of resistance, with that particular group. I think that's the point we'd like to get to with our TICA members. This is just a bare minimum that is required in their and that they buy into it.
And an interesting point when you said about losing members, we do lose asbestos members every year because they don't meet the criteria of those audits. So that is not uncommon to us. It's not what you want to do. It's not what you set out. We want to raise standards. But ultimately, if you haven't got a line of which you accept, sometimes there's no coming back from. You have to have a bar.
Yeah. If we go back to the stuff and things argument, how does TICA help members show the true value of thermal insulation that's well designed, well installed, and well maintained? Forgive me if I've got this wrong, but from my view, most clients and quite a lot of consultants, as long as it looks like it's okay, it doesn't really matter as long as it looks okay. How do you change that perception and show that the real value in that?
I think there's no one way to do that. It's a combination of many things, and it's why we exist as a trade body. It's our reason for being. But as we have changed our direction over the last 10 years, we have we're fortunate to have gained a few more resources, not least of which a dedicated technical director who's talking to people outside of the specialist contractor. Because let's be honest, if as a contractor you can settle from your garage, self-employed 10 people, price a job, and and the client that he's pricing thinks it's stuff, then he'll price the stuff and deliver stuff. So that message needs to go almost above our members, whilst at the same time bringing those members with us. So there is a whole educational thing, but I think it's also really appropriate to say we have some other drivers that are driving the sector too. The oil crisis, the energy crisis. Thermal insulation is energy intensive to produce, and it is really only the fact that the energy that it saves over its lifetime far exceeds the energy that it takes to create it, because it does drive energy to create that. So it has become very expensive in comparison to where we were 5-6 years ago. And that has made people start to look at, well, hang on a minute, this is costing almost as much as some of the technical equipment we're installing, yet we're paying no attention to it. Also led into, instead of being silent on LinkedIn, which I have to say 10 years ago, we now go out and challenge arguments. And as you probably know yourself, that creates debate. And where we've shied away from those conversations, we've got a lot more going on our side now to help us challenge them. So we do.
Yeah, I think it's a convenient, unrelated. Yeah, I don't know I can't remember the word, but there's some convenient social and political and economic factors that just weren't paid any attention to 10-15 years ago in regards to thermal insulation. So one was energy was cheap, and so like Mary suggested, no one really cared whether the systems performed, whereas energy now is very expensive. So everyone down to the individual who owns or rents property, up to the largest power stations in Europe care. So that helps, I think, with raising profile of what insulation does. And the other thing is the planet is heating up, but I think more and more people understand that we need to reduce carbon, and we have to reach net zero. And a lot of the work we do is to promote how insulation is the low-hanging fruit of how to do that. So I think there's some of the kind of bigger messages with insulation that help us help us to kind of raise the profile and get people through all aspects of the supply chain think about the importance of insulation. And I think the other important aspect is also that some of that insulation goes on to safety critical systems and life-saving systems. And if something's not installed correctly, we're back at ground fault.
Yeah.
I think somebody once said to me, the cheapest energy that you can possibly get is the stuff you don't use.
Very much so. Sadly not very sexy solution, but a very practical and pragmatic one that should be on your first on your list to please start.
Reduce, reuse. Yeah.
Actually, I'm still going to challenge back on that. If you listen to people out and about in society now, you're never very far away from a conversation about their energy bills and the drive to heat networks to find a solution to housing stock, heating of housing stock and carbon losses through housing stock and transport are two very big topics. So a drive to heat networks has to drive the standard of the insulation, because then, as Helen says, it becomes critical. And once every homeowner on the end of that heat network starts to have a voice in that, it's still not sexy, but it's rallied right up the agenda of importance, because you've got a lot of people very unhappy about where they're being forced to source their energy from.
One risk, I guess, of setting up an assessment standard, a competence assessment standard, is it becomes a bit of a tick box exercise. How are you designing the system so it really isn't a tick box exercise?
I think what we have currently is tick box without the audit. I think the audit is really going to drive attention to what's actually going on. If we look at the procurement process now, there's an awful lot of information that our contracting members have to provide to the supply chain. I would really question how much of that is of any value. Are they a real company? Have they got a modern slavery policy? Yeah, probably downloaded using Copilot and adjusted. That's a tick box. What did you price? And show me your delivery notes, and let's have a look at who installed it and the quality of what they did. What gaps have you got in that insulation, and how well was it cut, mited and vapor barriered together? That's not tick box. That's actual, taking the time to go and examine something. And more importantly, much though we'd love to think that every one of our members is going to come through an audit and with flying colours, there won't be. There'll be some issues. What we want to see is members who want to engage through the trade body, clearly not the certification body, but to go back and say, we seem to keep getting this wrong. What do we do? How can you help us? Because then we get back to what we do as a value proposition and actually driving standards and providing value. So I think it's quite easy to see those contractors that are really engaged in wanting to do something better. They're likely to have an apprentice or be interested in apprenticeships. They're likely to want to come back and question not why you documented it as a non-conformity or why the certification body documented it as a non-conformity, but what can we do about it so that doesn't happen next time? And as Helen's already said, we have a lot of experience in this with our asbestos members. We have some that just want to, a few, by the way, but they are there who want to argue the toss over that little decision, and they're going to take the bat and ball home. And then we have some that really just want to get it right, and can you help us? That's separation.
Yeah, I think that's key for me is that the learning and the benefits, they happen after the audit, don't they? It's almost like everything is collected via that audit. But what carrying out that audit does is it encourages transparency, encourages sharing of information, it encourages training, improvement. I think starting those conversations and through the trade association supporting individual members to improve in a way that we couldn't when we didn't all of it, because we know such limited information about how they run their businesses, is really just the beginning.
Do you think we need more sector-specific competence standards that are aligned in principle? We've talked, Marion, about incorporating the TICA competence assessment standard within the BESA one. So most BESA members will use thermal insulation, and it would make sense, therefore, to have, if you use a TICA member, you meet the requirement of the BESA standard as well. Do you see that interlinking standard competence assessment standards across the sector?
I do. I really do. And actually, the work that is being carried out through the sector leading groups, the competency frameworks, you start to really understand the scale of crossover between skill disciplines. So, we think about asbestos, but asbestos appears in all 5 super sectors. It's in soil, it's in building envelope, it's in building services. There's crossovers between every junction of ductwork, pipework, and I'm sure this will be true across other disciplines with roofing or cladding or concrete flooring or whatever. There are junctions. So it's not as simple as looking at one sector. And I think the way the built environment as a whole is trying to move forward, it's a big beast. And part of the problem that slows it down from making progress, in my own view, is the fragmentation of the way we do it. We're all trying to do the same thing, but in a different way. So nobody really recognizes what we're trying to do. It's a little bit like apprenticeship standards. I always say, if you look at the German model of apprenticeships, they're really well recognized. If you go abroad, you can see how much they value that apprenticeship and vocational route. And that's because everybody understands it. In the UK, we change that every 4 years. And actually, at the minute, we change it every 2 years. So nobody recognizes it.
And again today, I think. So final question. In 5 years' time, when this scheme is a success, what will the thermal insulation sector look like? How will it be different from there?
I think it's going to, it is my hope, this is going to help me achieve one of the original goals that was set to me 15 years ago by our then board. And they were really, really clear in their objections with me, which were very, very helpful. And one of them was to have thermal insulation viewed and respected as a skilled discipline. I believe that the audit will initially cause pain. We will lose some members. We will upset a few people. But ultimately, when there is value in it, we'll be able to finally come back with what is the value? What is the value of a TICA membership? But there's many points to that. I'm trying to keep this succinct at the moment, although you probably don't think I'm doing very well. But that is a really big way for me of showing that value of TICA membership, because we will have met that goal.
I think at sort of individual contractor level, what you'd hope to see in kind of 5 years' time is that for those individual businesses, they're able to procure better and more secure pipelines of work because they're recognised, they have the audit, it's recognised throughout the supply chain. You'd want to see that everybody's risk is reduced. So, this exercise isn't just so tier ones can say, well, we've got a TICA assured company carrying out that work, we tick the box and we push that risk down the line. It's for that individual contractor as well to know that if their business has been through that process of audit, that their risk itself is also reduced. So, yeah, I think it should impact in a positive way, kind of bottom line as well at some point.
I think it definitely will. We've all been to meetings, and firstly, it's a long game. You've been there 15 years, Marion. You know that things don't change overnight. They take a long time to change, but they do change. And second point is that we've all been to lots and lots of meetings where people say somebody needs to do something, and it's usually somebody else, the client, government, main contractors, specialist contractors. Somebody needs to do something. And actually, you can only impact the stuff you do yourself. So in BESA, we salute you at TICA for actually being leaders and taking on something that is not easy, it would be much easier to sit back and do nothing. And if we had more people like the two of you driving change in the industry and showing genuine leadership, because it comes at risk, we'd have a better industry. So on that note, Marion Marsland, Helen Anderson of TICA, thank you very much for joining our podcast today.
Thanks for having us, David. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Well, thank you for tuning in to Behind the Built Environment. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more in-depth conversations. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and share with your colleagues. Stay connected with BESA for the latest updates and insight into our industry. And until next time, I'm David Frise, and this has been Behind the Built Environment. Goodbye.